Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. FPL Vincenzo back here with a pod before game week 16 of FPL. Obviously quite a significant game week because we're going to get 5 free transfers. So everyone now has 5 free transfers to use. And I think there will be an expectation and an objective from managers right now to try and keep them. Use 1 transfer a week and try to retain the 5 free transfers for as long as possible. When the blanks and doubles start, there'll be a chance to maybe play an early, sort of a temporary wild card or something, and go from there. I'm not sure if that is the right strategy personally, and I've heard others talking about maybe using all 5 at once and being aggressive. Not saying that's a bad plan either. So what I thought I'd do today is look at effectively a mid-season report. I know we're not quite at mid-season yet. This is still game week 16, we're not in 19 game weeks. But even so, I think because we've got 5 free transfers and a chance to reset a little bit our team and our thoughts and things like that, there'll be a good chance to look at what we have learned over the course of the season and maybe act on that now. Because if we are getting things wrong, we're in the wrong formation, we're picking the wrong players, then obviously we've got a chance to fix it now with these 5 free transfers. So let's have a look at some data and some thoughts and some opinions and see what it's saying. So we've had 16 game weeks so far, and I've broken it down on the screen at the moment into points blocks by position. So for those on audio, it's points between 60 and 64, between 65 and 69, 70 and 79, 80 and 89, 90 and 99, 100 and 109, 110 and 119, and 120 plus. So what we can see at the moment is only one player has achieved 120 points or more, obviously Erling Haaland, and he's actually the only player to have eclipsed 100 points so far. So well ahead in terms of FPL points. Between 90 and 99 points is 1 defender. Between 80 and 89 points is 4 defenders, 4 midfielders, 1 striker. 70 and 79 points is 8 defenders, 5 midfielders, no strikers or goalkeepers. 65 to 69, we get our first goalkeeper. So 2 goalkeepers between 65 and 69 points. Alongside 3 defenders, 7 midfielders, 1 attacker. And between 60 and 64 points is 2 goalkeepers, 4 defenders, 11 midfielders, and 2 attackers. So tallying that up then, between 60 and the top scoring player in the game at the moment is 4 goalkeepers. There's 20 defenders, 27 midfielders, and just 5 strikers. In the thoughts column, I've made a few sort of more general notes. So the 3rd top scoring striker in the game at the moment is Jarrod Bowen after Erling Haaland and Thiago. So yeah, a lot of us are playing 3 up front at the moment, still me as well. I've got Voltemada, Thiago and Haaland. But there's 14 defenders in the game that have scored more points than the 3rd top scoring striker. I did a pod, I don't know how many weeks ago it was now, 6 weeks ago, talking about formations and what the meta is, and sort of highlighting at that point that we should be playing 4 at the back, maybe considering 5 at the back. This data kind of backs it up, and I still haven't taken heed of my own advice here. So yeah, 3 up front looks fairly not useless necessarily, and there'll be times when that 3rd striker could be appealing. But if you're looking at how many points the 3rd striker's got and how much strikers in general cost, particularly those of the Mateta, Voltemada, Bowen price point, defenders are obviously giving way more value for money. So yeah, so 14 defenders have scored more points than the 3rd top scoring striker. In terms of 60 plus points, even goalkeepers are not doing bad in terms of matching strikers. As I said, there's only 5 strikers at the moment that have scored 60 or more points. 4 goalkeepers have also done the same. So we're considered to think goalkeepers are fairly generic, in some ways fairly useless. Well, strikers are not really outperforming them either. And I say defenders offering the best routes to points. There's 13 defenders at the moment that have scored 70 or more points. 9 midfielders that have done the same, just 2 strikers, no goalkeepers. So considering what defenders cost, and I know the likes of Gabriel and Timber have got a bit pricier now compared to what they started the season, there's still lots of value to be had in the defenders, and certainly playing more of them seems to make more sense. And I don't think many of us right now have reliably played 5 at the back. There's probably not many of us that have reliably played 4 at the back. I'm sure there are some of us that have transitioned to be more willing to play 4 at the back more often, but our teams are not so much set up to do that, play 4 or 5 at the back. We're still looking to play 3, I think, most weeks. Looking at, say, 15 game weeks of data, defenders is probably arguably in some ways the most powerful position in the game at the moment. I've then done a slightly different table in terms of points per start by position. So I've limited this to those players that have made 10 or more appearances in the first 15 game weeks. And again, how many points per start are people getting? So Haaland again at the top, obviously he's getting between 8 and 8.9 points per start, really good. Between 7 and 7.99 points per start is one defender. Between 6 and 6.9, 2 defenders, 2 midfielders. Between 5.5 and 5.9 points per start, 5 defenders, 8 midfielders, 3 attackers. And 5 and 5.4 is 6 defenders and 11 midfielders. This, I think, a little bit more highlights midfielders as being options. I say on this, there is 21 midfielders averaging over 5 points per start in comparison to 14 defenders, just 4 strikers. But the crossover is almost a bit less. Of those 21 midfielders, only 11 also featured on the last slide of getting enough points. So midfielders are getting points per start. Someone like Cherksey is a good example of this at Man City, who's on this, would feature in this. And I actually think he's one of the more prominent midfielders for points per start. But his total points obviously isn't incredibly good because he obviously hasn't started enough games or made as many appearances, often a sub for Manchester United, Manchester City even. So, yeah, I'm don't know what to make of this one as much, but there are 10 defenders to appear on both lists. So they've got a lot of points and averaging decent points per start. 11 midfielders and again, just 2 strikers. So I guess a bit more evidence. I think goalkeepers and strikers are probably the least useful in the game, and we should be prioritising defenders and midfielders. I've done, because defenders came out so well in those first 2 slides, I then decided to have a look at some defenders in a bit more detail separately and do a separate sort of defenders report card. So obviously through 15 game weeks, most of these have played 14 or 15 games, apart from Gabriel, who's obviously played 11 and been injured. And we'll have a breakdown now of their points, their clean sheets, their DEFCON, their attacking returns and points per start. The objective of this slide really was to try and work out which of these point sources was sustainable. So Mark Gahey at the top, 91 points so far, averaging 6.5 points per start. Really, really good. 6 clean sheets from Palace in 14. So the clean sheet conversion rate of something like 45%. I think it's something like that. Is that sustainable? Would we expect Palace to finish the season on 17 clean sheets, somewhere like that? That's the pacing they're going. Maybe it's not unreasonable. So maybe the clean sheets part of his points can be maintained. Just 12 DEFCON points, so 6 DEFCON in 14. He's averaging just slightly less than 50%. That feels like it's sustainable. Maybe could be improved. Where he's getting obviously most of his points at the moment is in the attacking returns, 2 goals and 4 assists through 14 fixtures. Daniel Munoz was also on 6 attacking returns. So Gahey and Munoz have the same quantity of attacking returns through 14 game weeks. That doesn't feel so sustainable. So depending on how you feel about Gahey, I still think he's a reasonable pick. Because the clean sheets, I think that rate of clean sheet is maintainable. The DEFCON is sustainable, but you'd expect the attacking returns to slow down. So I think it's a bit unreasonable to be expecting something like 15 attacking returns from a centre-back over a season. Again, it could happen in a really high variance season, but unlikely. Daniel Munoz, I say 6.4 points per start, 89 points, just 2 behind. Extra goal on Gahey, but 1 assist less. So again, 6 returns in 14. For any defender, getting an attacking return almost every other game feels a lot. He's obviously a wing-back who does get into high and wide positions. So maybe it is sustainable to him to end the season with something like 16 attacking returns. That's what he's pacing towards. So maybe not outrageous. DEFCON 3 times feels like that's sustainable. 7 clean sheets, yeah, maybe sustainable. So Munoz, I would say, although he's on 2 points less than Gahey, he's performing at a rate that's can be maintained a bit better. So I think he should be on radar as someone that could match his level of performance. He is pacing towards a 200-point season, though, so bear that in mind. Do you think he's that good that he can get a 200-point season? If you think he can, then his sort of rate of return and his points per start is fine. So I haven't owned him all season yet because I've had Lacroix, and I've not really sort of thought that double Palace defence was a viable option. Maybe I have to rethink that and consider getting Munoz in. Chalabar third, 82 points. Again, 7 clean sheets in 14 for him, so 50% for Chelsea. Again, might be sustainable, feels a little bit high, sort of 19 over a season. 5 fixtures for DEFCON in 14 feels fine. 3 goals is obviously probably excessive for him. So his points might slow down, would be my expectation. Gabriel, 7 clean sheets in 11. Even for Arsenal, as good as they are defensively, that feels like a lot. Pacing up towards 25, 26 clean sheets over a season. I don't think Arsenal are that good. So the clean sheet rate's probably going to slow down. 4 lots of DEFCON in 11 feels sustainable. 1 goal, 2 assists, probably for him feels sustainable. So again, probably overperforming, 7.4 points per start. But I think we can probably... He'll get close to matching this over the second half. If you look at the next 11 appearances for him, I wouldn't be surprised if the attacking returns and the DEFCONs are similar. Maybe the clean sheets will be more like 5, maybe 6 rather than 7. But not bad. Feels like semi-sustainable. Gets a bit interesting in this next batch because now we're getting into the defenders that aren't getting the attacking returns and maybe getting more of their points through DEFCON. And this is, I think, more sustainable and therefore more noteworthy. So Lacroix first, 80 points in 15, 5.3 points per start, 7 clean sheets in 15. That feels sustainable. DEFCON 8 in 15. That feels sustainable. No goals and 2 assists so far. In terms of attacking output and attacking capability, I would put his capabilities similar to Gahey. Gahey's on 6 returns, including 2 goals. Lacroix's on 2 returns, no goals. He has scored in Europe. Maybe Gahey is a bit more aggressive attacking the ball. Maybe he's just finding himself in better positions. But it feels like, though, it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect those two to end the season with similar attacking returns. So if anything, I would argue here Lacroix is slightly underachieving on 80 points because, say, the clean sheets in the DEFCON is sustainable. The attacking returns feels like there's opportunity for improvement. Same for Tarkowski, who I've listed in yellow. I think he's arguably one of the most interesting case studies. Going into game week 1, I think we viewed him as a DEFCON defender. A lot of us maybe thought it was a bit overpriced at 5.5, but we could see the appeal because looking at if DEFCON existed in previous seasons, he could be very good. He's delivering that. He's getting DEFCON 2 in every 3 games, 10 in 15 so far. Definitely feels sustainable for him. Clean sheets, 6 in 15. So that's 40%, is it? Something like that. Feels sustainable for Everton. 1 assist so far is the only attacking returns. 4.9 points per start. My expectation going into game week 1 this year was to have all these DEFCON guys. To pick the Senessis, the Tarkovskis. At the time, we thought Milenkovic, Joachim Anderson. With the sort of opinion, they were ever presence in their team. So we'd get 38 games out of them, minus maybe the odd injury or suspension. Probably 35 games was an objective target for appearances. And I probably put them down to get something like 4 points per game as an average. And I would have been quite happy with 140 points, 150 points from that spot in my team for someone costing anywhere between 4.5 and 5.5. 5.5 for Tarkovsky, obviously 5 for Senesi. Others were costing cheaper. Tarkovsky's pacing slightly ahead of plan. Maybe the clean sheets are a little bit higher than what we'd have projected for Everton, but everything else is going to plan. I'm quite annoyed with myself, actually, for not sticking to this. I've messed around with Christian Romero in my team, who is unreliable for DEFCON, unreliable for clean sheets, unreliable for attacking returns. He obviously did score 2 goals when I didn't own him. recently against Newcastle. I've had Malik Chow in my team. I missed his 2 goals against Everton. I benched him. Another one, not reliable for DEFCON, not reliable for clean sheets. And I've moved away from what I thought was the sensible strategy going into game week 1 of just picking set and forget DEFCON guys, playing them every week, and knowing over a block you would get 4 points per game out of them. And if you look at this list, Tarkowski averaging 4.9, Senesi 5.1, Joachim Andersen 3.9. So basically 4 points per game, caused by Fulham only keeping 3 clean sheets in 14. Maybe that'll improve. So that strategy, I think, going into game week 1 was probably right. That we load our team up with DEFCON guys and just play them every week, regardless of the fixtures. Don't mess around trying to anticipate points, because the points will be unreliable. We've already seen Everton get a couple of unexpected clean sheets this year. Senesi got 8 the weekend, I think, when most people probably benched him at home to Chelsea. So I want to get back onto this strategy because I say we've got Tarkowski on 73 points, Senesi on 71, doing nothing irregular, just doing the bare basics, keeping clean sheets sort of a third of the games, maybe a little bit more often, getting DEFCON 2/3 of the time, maybe a little bit more often. And these guys aren't scoring yet. We're seeing from other central defenders on this list, Gahey getting 2 goals, Chalobah getting 3 goals. The centre-back goals are unpredictable. Romero got 2 in 1 game recently. Van Heck got 2 in 1 game recently. Thiaw got 2 in 1 game recently. If you're a centre-back getting in the box from set pieces, you've got some opportunity to score. But predicting them is close to impossible. So you'd expect if Gabriel, the likes of Tarkowski, Senesi, Andersen, play 35 games, you'd probably expect them to score once, maybe twice over the season. They haven't yet. So if anything, I expect these defenders to at least match their current pacing, maybe even better their current pacing. And at the moment, I regret not owning Tarkowski or Senesi. So I think it's something I'm quite keen to fix here, that they're pacing towards 160 point season. And for defenders costing 5 million, and it feels quite predictable that they're going to get that. Someone like Munoz is obviously a bit more unpredictable how many attacking returns he's going to get. The DEFCON feels predictable. There's no reason to suggest that Tarkowski won't carry on pacing at 2 DEFCON in 3 games. Senesi won't carry on pacing at 2 DEFCON in 3 games. So a bit of a mistake, I think, from me with these two. I think these two should be owned and should be played every week. Just going down a bit further on this, Van Dijk, only 56 points. But he has got 18 points of DEFCON, but no attacking returns is a big surprise. He's been unlucky lately. Obviously, the goal disallowed against Man City, had a few chances against Leeds as well. So maybe he can get himself up to nearer 5 points per game. So Joachim Andersen let down at the moment by not enough clean sheets. In fact, I think of all the defenders that have got DEFCON in 7 or more games, so obviously most the teams have played 15 fixtures. Most defenders have played sort of upwards of 13, 14. So for those that have got DEFCON at least 50% of the time, Michael Keane is the only one of that cohort to have scored. So a lot of the higher DEFCON defenders have not actually scored any goals yet. You'd expect that to change in the second half, that they will get 1, maybe 2 goals. So there's another string to their bow in the second half. Nathan Collins is in that group as well. So at the moment, certain centre-backs are getting attacking returns and not enough DEFCON. Certain defenders are getting DEFCON, not enough attacking returns. So something to bear in mind here, that I think Gabriel is fine because he gets a bit of everything. But there's probably some positives to be had here. But these DEFCON guys, I like to Tarkowski, Van Dijk, Senesi, Andersen, Lacroix. I think we should expect some goals from them. Next point I wanted to make is on midfield hot streaks. I don't know if this is a bit of bitterness from me because I don't own Phil Foden for the last 3 game weeks of getting 15, 17 and 12 points. But the reason I didn't own Phil Foden was because his attacking data was very similar to the other 2 midfielders I owned, who were Semenyo and Mbeumo. They were the 2 players I could have sold to get to Foden. And looking at underlying data, the 3 of them were largely equal. So I was thinking, why am I moving one to the other and using a transfer when it feels like a sideways move? Do I really need to do that? And then I started to have a look at streaks and how unpredictable and difficult it is at the moment to predict midfielders getting points. So a little case study on this slide on the screen at the moment, looking at Semenyo, Pedro Neto, Mbeumo and Foden. And looking at how short-term and how bandwagony, not a real word, but I've just invented it, the game is at the moment. So Semenyo in the first 7 game weeks did incredibly well, 15, 6, 2, 13, 5, 7, 18 points. And his price went up about $1 million in those 7 weeks as everyone clambered to get him. That was his hot streak for the first 7. And then in the 8 since, he's had 4, 3, 2, a blank 0 against Villa when he missed the pen. Then he was injured for a game, 1, 4, 3. So very swingy, very bandwagony, one hot streak followed by an absolute quiet one. It happened to be just as his streak ended, Pedro Neto's picked up. So he started the season quite weakly for Chelsea, 3-7-3, 2-1-2-2. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, with absolutely nothing to suggest that a streak was imminent, he got 12-8-3-9-8. And then lately, the last 3 weeks, it slowed down again back to 2-6-2. So if you would have gone from Semenyo to Neto in game week 8, you would have been absolutely laughing. Equally, Semenyo to Mbeumo would have been really good because he started the season 2-2 with it. So 2-2-10, 2-3-2, 1 return in the first 6 weeks, otherwise a load of 2-pointers. Then all of a sudden it went 6-9, 15, 2-7. Lately it's died off again, 1-1-2. Got an 8-pointer against Wolves the weekend, but obviously still overshadowed by Bruno Fernandes. And then we come to, say, Phil Foden. 2 of the first 3 weeks he didn't play. He got 1 point in the other one. Then he got 12 points in game week 4. And then between game week 5 and game week 12, we got 3-1, 3-3, 1-4, 3-2. I owned him for one of those weeks against Burnley. Man City scored 5 goals. All he did in that game was get booked. So he ended up with 1 point against the so-called weakest team in the league. So it goes to show the variance involved here. Game week 13, he obviously became popular. Lots of managers were on a free hit. But I say, looking at the recent run of form, 3-1, 3-3, 1-4, 3-2, there was nothing in the data to suggest that points were imminent for him. And all of a sudden, we've hit a little streak, 15, 17, 12, sort of largely out the blue, I would say. Maybe a slight change of position. He's playing maybe more off the right now than centrally. And now we've had about 6 price rises in 10 days or something stupid because of this bandwagon. How long's this one going to last? Semenyo's lasted 7 weeks. Neto's was 5. Mbeumo's was 5. Foden's on 3. So maybe we'll get more good weeks out of Phil Foden still yet. Maybe his bandwagon will end. But in all of these cases, everyone's jumping on these bandwagons midway through. But the underlying data isn't much different. So looking over the season so far, Semenyo has an XG of 0.37, the best of these 4. Foden 0.33, Mbeumo 0.28, Neto 0.23. Then in terms of XGI, Foden is marginally ahead, 0.53 to Mbeumo 0.49, Semenyo 0.46, Neto 0.44 per 90 minutes. You can see there's nothing really between them. And yet, if you jumped from Semenyo to Neto to Foden, you could have had an incredibly high variance of points from doing 2 transfers. But how you come to make that decision is impossible because it's basically a sideways move. I've tried to anticipate what might be next here. So 3 other midfielders right now that have similar-ish underlying data to these 3, or to these 4, but haven't had a streak yet. Anthony Gordon, XG 0.48, is comfortably ahead of all of these 4 players. XGI 0.69, again, comfortably ahead. Not really any consistency in his points so far. I think his penalty against Burnley was one of his only returns of the season lately. So he is effectively due, and there's nothing to suggest he can't start a bandwagon. Saka obviously costs a lot more than most of these guys, but XG 0.36, basically the same as Semenyo. XGI 0.66, again superior to Foden. Again, not seen loads of returns from him yet, certainly no double-figure returns, really. Could he have a streak of 15, 17, 12? Quite possibly the same way Foden has. And digging even deeper, Kevin Schade, don't get him in now because he's got 5 yellow cards, I think, so he's suspended for game week 16. But looking ahead, XG is quite low, 0.24, but the same as Neto, and Neto's had a streak. XGI 0.31. But again, there's no method, I don't think, to these streaks. It's identifying a player in a reasonable team, maybe he plays in a reasonable position. In these cases, they're all kind of wide players or number 10s. And then punting to get lucky. is the way I view it. I owned Semenyo for most of his streak, did well. I owned Mbeumo for all of his streak, so did quite well. I was on that bandwagon early. Foden I haven't got anything from. Neto I didn't have anything from. I've owned Saka a while, hadn't got much from him yet. I'm debating Gordon or Sharda as possible players I bring in soon. Obviously, the next streak could be someone not even mentioned on this pod. But just be aware that, say, the price changes are absolutely crazy for midfielders like this. People are jumping on these bandwagons so quickly on the basis of one, maybe two hauls. And none of these players have been overly consistent so far, but they all have had their streak. I guess for those that haven't bought Foden in yet and are now thinking I have to get him, there might still be opportunity in this streak that it might last a bit longer. Equally, this might be the end of it. So do you want to go him? Or are you going to try to anticipate the next streak? Say the ideal strategy for this game is to move off of the streaky player at the right moment and then jump onto the next streaky player, the same way someone would have done if they'd have gone Semenyo to Mbeumo to Foden. Can we anticipate the next streak? No, I don't think it's obvious to highlight who it would be. There was nothing in Neto's data to suggest a streak was imminent, nothing in Foden's to suggest a streak was imminent. So just something to bear in mind, that this is how the midfield, that's how it's looking for midfielders right now, and anticipating what comes next is incredibly challenging. Last slide for this is, I say, future planning and my thoughts on where I want my team to go. So I want to return to the original plan of primarily having a DEFCON defence. And I think I want 4 of them. I think Lacroix, Tarkowski, Senesi, all very good for DEFCON, all been, I would say, borderline unlucky in terms of attacking returns so far. But I think they are 3 defenders you just play every week, set and forget. And they'll average you somewhere between 4 or 5 points per game. And if you get that over the second half of the season or from now to the end, they're all going to deliver you over 100 points between now and the end of the season. I think that's more than reasonable from those 3. So I'm just going to get them and play them all the time. When Gabriel comes back for Arsenal, he's going to come back in. I've got Van Dijk at the moment. I think I'll just hold him as the Gabriel placeholder. And then the 5th defender, I think there's scope here to use this as a punt spot. You could have it as another DEFCON guy, Joachim Andersen for 4.5 and save budget. Maybe you might even think Alderate or Bijol or someone like that is good enough in his 5th defender spot. I don't think, even Joachim Andersen, I don't think he's quite strong enough to play as often as I think I want to get into the habit of playing 5 at the back. So Lacroix, Gabriel, Tarkowski, Senesi, I think I'm happy to play them in all fixtures. I think particularly in the case of Senesi, Bournemouth can drop the odd clanger and have the odd bad game. And I might be open-minded enough to bench him occasionally to play 4-4-2. But I think Lacroix, Gabriel, Tarkowski should play every game. Senesi, I think, will play more than 50% of the time with them. And I think the 5th defender you then use for an upside defender who's got a big ceiling, who could get attacking returns. So Munoz being a prime example. There's plenty of teams now adapting to playing wing-backs. We know from Liverpool that if Frimpong comes back, could he be a very attacking defender? Could Chelsea adapt the role of Cucurella? I don't think he's quite as attacking this year as he was last season, but that could change depending on team setup and things like that. If Cucurella starts getting forward again, I think he's got a ceiling. Obviously, Nico O'Reilly, we've seen get forward, can get attacking returns. So I'm prepared to use that 5th defender spot as a rotation punt spot to target fixtures and target high upside defenders. If you've got attacking fullbacks, particularly some that might take some set pieces, could be quite handy. So Munoz, O'Reilly, Lewis Hall, I think probably fits into this category. If you feel like he's going to get games. Frimpong, if he comes back, maybe he'll even play right wing when he comes back, and I'll keep this spot for him. So yeah, 4 DEFCON guys, or 3 DEFCON guys, Gabriel and an attacking defender, and play that back 5, I would say 60-70% of the time. In midfield, Saka, I think, is a hold for now. If Palmer hits a run of form, that could be a sideways move. And maybe Saka could become Rice, who's quite well balanced as a midfielder. But I think Saka is one of those midfielders who could hit a streak. So I'm happy to have him. I've already got him. Happy to keep him. Bruno Fernandes, I don't own right now, but I will get this game week. Logic says he's got so many routes to points. you know, his minutes are secure, takes penalties, takes set pieces, has hauls in him like we saw against Wolves. I think he's looking like almost a must-own at the moment. Then the third midfielder spot is open. I still have Semenyo. People have obviously moved that onto Foden. This could be the spot for the punt. Could you put Gordon here? Could you put Sharda here? Could you put someone else? I don't know who that is. Morgan Rogers. Anyone that you think there's a streak imminent. And you use that as your third mid every week. On the bench, I've got Minte, who could also factor into this. I think he's a bit cheaper, but equally there's midfielders around this price point who could be talismanic, who could be streaky, who you could target for good runs of fixtures. Someone like Dewsbury Hall's done very well lately, a bit cheaper. I think I want to leave Elliot Anderson as sort of my permanent fifth mid because he's so reliable for DEFCON and minutes. I think he's quite handy as my sort of emergency midfielder. I don't think I view him as someone I want to play overly often. He will be my sort of 8th or 7th attacker, but I won't play him very much. So I think if I'm playing 5-3-2, it'll be one of the Semenyo and Minte spots that takes the third midfielder position. And these are two positions with the Munoz spot that I'm quite keen to jump around, use my transfers on to target the fixtures, target doubles and blanks. Look at fixture runs and think, yeah, this player's got an upside in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I think Sharda's a good example coming up. I'd say not this week, he's banned. But the week after, you look at Brentford's fixtures, you think, I could see some points here. Could he go on a little streak? So Semenyo and Minte spots for me will be used to target that. And then up front, get, in my case, Voltamade down to Mark Gui. I think we're trained at the moment because there's plenty of cheap defenders that are playing. I say Bijol was still 3.9 at Leeds, for example. But we've got Rodon, Alderate, Michele, these guys. Because they're playing and they're super cheap, we have them as our sort of permanent third sub. And we're trained again to put our fifth defender as our third sub. I think we need to retrain ourselves and get into the mindset that this season, based on the way the points are because of DEFCON, maybe they've changed the BPS system a bit. Strikers aren't as lucrative. And even those that are doing fairly well, the likes of Mateta, Voltamada, these sort of guys are still not featuring prominently on any in terms of points per game, anything like that. I think you just leave Haaland and Thiago there. Haaland, obviously, for pretty much permanent captaincy. Thiago's cheap and returning well. And just put Gui as the third striker. Leave him third on your bench. How often do you really need the third bench player? Take all the money out of that spot and then use that to give yourself an extra player, maybe in your Semenyo spot. If you're trying to punt, maybe you can afford to take the price point up a bit or something. So there's a loose plan, and say to rotate between 5-3-2 and 4-4-2. But I think the default for me would be 5-3-2 here. The sort of one question mark I have is how quickly to jump on this. I could use 5 free transfers this week as we've got them and just move to this immediately. And it should allow me to roll most of the next block of weeks. And quite quickly, I'll probably get my 5 free transfers built back up again. Because lots of these players are just play every week, set and forget sort of players. What's on my mind at the moment a little bit is normally around game week 23, 24, somewhere like that, we've in the past had an unexpected double be dropped in. Maybe there'll be a blank sort of unexpectedly around then. Obviously, the big blanks start around game week 29, but there's normally some fixture interference before that. To be flexible around that point and to be able to move around, I kind of want to make sure I've got enough transfers in the bank around game week 23. So if I try and drip feed these transfers or wait until sort of game week 19, 20 to do a big block move of 4 or 5 transfers to jump back onto this plan, I'm potentially leaving myself short of moves going into that game week 23, 24 period where something might happen. So it's on my mind to just get this done sooner rather than later. It might take all 5 transfers. It might take 4. But once it's done, it's done. And then I've got time to build my transfers back up again. Equally, I could try and make them 1, 2 at a time. And maybe by game week 20, I've got there. We are still a bit trained to look at the fixtures and think, I'm not sure. Because look at this defence for this week. If I go ahead and do all these defender transfers now, I'm going to end up with 2 defenders at home to Man City, 1 away to Man United and 1 away to Chelsea. Again, it shouldn't matter because you're picking them for a block and you're expecting 4 or 5 points per game average. So there will be games they don't get 4 or 5 points, they get 2 or 3, and others they get 8. But I say try to anticipate when to play them is the tricky part. So you just play them every week. But it's still not pleasing on the eye, is it, to look at a team and see they're all playing away, they're all playing Chelsea, Man United, or they've got Man City or Arsenal or something like that. So the defenders I have right now, which are the likes of Van Dijk, I might be tempted to sort of phase these transfers in and keep him a bit longer. Joachim Anderson I've got at the moment as well, who say isn't doing as well as these guys, but the fixtures for the next couple might allow Fulham to improve on their 3 clean sheets. So yeah, that's really it for this pod. Just wanted to really talk about that, what we've learned. And as a little bit of a recap, it is defenders win. Ultimately, strikers are fairly rubbish. DEFCON guys are the ones to own. And my strategy probably heading into game week 1 was probably accurate. I picked a couple of bad players to fit the brief. Milenkovic, players like this that didn't deliver as expected. And then gradually, over the course of the first 15 weeks, some of my transfers have pushed me further away from that initial setup, that initial strategy. And that's not been sensible for me to do that. So obviously part 1 is accepting you made mistakes and admitting you made mistakes. Part 2 is then coming up with a plan to rectify it. So that's what I'm going to aim to do for my team, is to head back towards that plan, getting the likes of Tarkowski and Senesi back in, looking to play 4 and even 5 at the back on a regular basis, and certainly not playing 3 strikers, because that does feel like a poor strategy, particularly in comparison to last year when there were lots of strikers that had 1 shot, scored 1 goal, got maximum bonus, took 9 points. That sort of thing is not happening now. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Something to think about in terms of your 5 transfers this week. Are you just going to use 1 and try and do that every week to retain 5? Or are you happy to maybe restructure your team and rejig things and look for the chance here to reset and get back onto a different kind of template that sets you up better for points in the long run? That's it for this pod, and I'll be back obviously before game week 17 with some more thoughts. Thanks everyone.